Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles, and it's always a pleasure to share facts and viewpoints in the world of sports featuring wonderful guests. It's been a great run over the past almost year of featuring wonderful individuals from all over the country and people that have really made an impact in sports. And before I introduce this illustrious gentleman that I will talk with, make sure to go to my YouTube channel to see past episodes of So Much to Talk About. So you can go on my YouTube channel, which is NSI World. N as in no, S as in Sam, I as in Indigo World, to check out past interviews and past shows from So Much to Talk About, which has lasted for such a long time. And it's been so great to be inundated into the sports world through the show originally, for sure. And wow, I want to introduce this gentleman who is a voice that we know and we love, for sure. And he has had a prolific career covering 4 decades of sports, all the different sports. He has done play-by-play announcing for the NBA on TNT, the NFL on CBS and Westwood One, also the NCAA Final Four on Westwood One, and in past years, he was the play-by-play broadcaster for the Minnesota Timberwolves and Sacramento Kings, as well as several NFL teams during the preseason. He is one of the greatest broadcasters in sports history. There's no doubt about it. It is my pleasure to introduce not just a great broadcaster, but a wonderful individual. I want to introduce Mr. Kevin Harlan on So Much to Talk About. How you doing, sir?
Nabaté, I'm great. That was some kind of introduction, and I am very grateful for that. And thank you for your kind words. And it's a privilege to be on with you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. The privilege is all mine. And your family is doing well during this pandemic. Everyone's been safe and healthy, right?
By the grace of God, yeah, we've been safe and healthy, and a lot of time together, which has been a wonderful byproduct of this pandemic. I trust you and yours close to you have been safe as well, and we're all just trying to, I think, individually and collectively trying to do the best we can, hopefully for your fellow human being and for your own family, staying safe, staying in a position where you are very smart about what you do. And it's a little different traveling around the NFL and getting on airplanes and taxis and walking through airports. It certainly is challenging. And I always think about that when I come back home off the road, and I've got my wife and our kids and now our 2 grandchildren, small grandchildren. So I guess I'm a little extra precautious when I am traveling, and certainly when I come home, making sure that I feel 100% in all the different areas where you need to feel the right way. And if I had any inkling that I wasn't, I know that I would quarantine myself, because I would not want this to infiltrate our family. But we knock on wood and we say our prayers, and we're thankful that we're healthy so far.
Yes, indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. And there's so much to talk about with you, about your illustrious career, about what's going on currently with the NFL and NBA. But first, like, you're in Foxborough right now, and you're getting ready to call Sunday, October 18th game between the New England Patriots and the Denver Broncos. It was supposed to happen on the 11th of October, but COVID reared its ugly head, all right, and it's rearing its ugly head around the NFL. So do you think the NFL and the NFL Players Association should have thoroughly worked together to create a bubble situation for each of the 32 teams to focus on, or like have groups of teams around the country doing their own bubble? What's your take on that?
Well, those are obviously things they've talked about and great ideas, and you lead the conversation well. I don't know that with 100+ staff, players, coaches, everything that a team has, sometimes even more, but trainers in there. I mean, you're talking about a very large number to put in a bubble situation. It would be the safest, clearly. Major League Baseball, up until this date, has had multiple weeks of no positive COVID result.
Mm-hmm.
We know the NBA pulled off an incredibly impressive bubble in Orlando. While it may have been mentally challenging for the players, it certainly was the safest environment for them. And because of that, Nabaté, they've really gotten wonderful praise from all sectors
Mm-hmm.
in what they did. The NFL
Yes.
is like college football, trying to travel, play with a
Mm-hmm.
large number of players, a little bit more difficult. And they knew it would be. And thus the individual team and the rules and regulations are to the point where there are layers of testing, layers of protection and quarantining and division. And they've tried to do everything humanly possible except the bubble, because these players all go home to their families or roommates or whoever every time they leave the facility. And there's really no telling what, from the time they leave to the time they come back the next morning, what they've been exposed to. If you're a father, you've got a wife, you've got kids, and you'd have to keep track of what they've done all day and who they've come in contact with. So there's some pretty impossible things you've got to deal with. And I think truly the NFL has done about as well as they can without a bubble situation. Come playoff time, they may change that thinking because of the importance of the playoffs, what they mean for the teams.
That's right.
And they may go into a semi-bubble type situation. But I've got to praise the NFL. They have soldiered on. They have done a pretty remarkable job getting this far into the season, a third of the way into the regular season, with some, but in the context, pretty minimal disruption.
Right. Wow. And now, Kevin, because it's interesting because, like I remember hearing a number like $25 million per team it could have had if for each team to like kind of have that campus atmosphere and then have family members visit, but they would have to be tested, et cetera, et cetera. And but supposedly the Players Association wasn't for that, supposedly. So it's just hopefully we don't have to go through this in 2021 where we would have to revisit this, situation.
It's hard on everybody. It's hard on just the average person who has to go into work and just or stay at home and work and deal with those elements. So no one's got it easy. I would say that the NFL has tried to, and I think it is an ever-changing method of testing, precaution, all of it, safety. It's been a pretty successful undertaking. Now we're, as a country, as a world, going into a very interesting time with the temperatures changing, the seasons changing, more indoors. We've already seen spikes, and I'm sure the NFL will reflect some of that as well, just as they are a part of society. And so we'll have to see where this story goes. But they're soldiering on, like I said, and it's been a pretty impressive endeavor to pull off and to get this far, I think, into the season.
For sure. Wow. Here on So Much to Talk About with the great Kevin Harlan, one of the great preeminent sports broadcasters, play-by-play. He does play-by-play for the NBA on TNT, as well as the the NFL on CBS and Westwood One, and of course the NCAA Final Four voice for Westwood One as well. So Kevin, LeBron James, you got to call some of his games at the NBA bubble. First question I have for you: how was that experience of the NBA bubble personally for you, and how was the interaction with your broadcasting colleagues so different?
Well, for the broadcasters, the only really bad thing was, or uncomfortable thing was, that you could not leave the grounds of the hotel unless you took the bus to the arena and then right back again. So, and that's a minimal disruption, to be quite honest. The hotel was nice. Get outside and walk around the grounds. There was plenty of ability to do those things. And I worked in my room basically every day. So I had over 20 games that I did, and was there for 5.5 weeks, 3.5 weeks the first time, got home for 10 days, then retested and got back in the bubble for another 2+ weeks. So, you know, and I hate to complain at all because so many people are going through so much more stress and much more difficult situation. So that wasn't tough. And then interaction with my broadcast partners, we really couldn't get close to our sideline reporters, and we had a myriad of people there that were doing our sideline. And as far as me and Reggie Miller, we were separated by plexiglass. We rode on the bus together, but separately. Didn't really interact a great deal when we were away from the arena because we all had our own little things we were doing. And he was, you know, in his room preparing, and I was in mine. And the days would go by pretty quick, but you miss your family. And he has 2 little ones and his wife, and he's got that, and I've got my family, and so like all of us, when we're quarantined, you miss those you love, and but really it was not that difficult. You know, from a broadcast standpoint, Nabaté, we were off the floor, which is different. We were back about 20-30 rows on a mezzanine level, and while that was different, it was manageable, and we adjusted. You miss some of the interaction with players and coaches that you would normally have courtside and before a game because we could not go near them at all. They were in a completely different level of quarantine. There were 3 levels. They were the most quarantined and cordoned off from everybody. We were as broadcasters in the middle section, and then there was another group, technicians and so forth, that were in a 3rd level of security. So. But really no complaints, and they did a marvelous job. The people at Turner, the NBA people, it was incredible what they pulled off.
Oh, absolutely. That is for sure. I mean, what a success. And also the great thing with the players bonding together on the social issues that are plaguing this country right now, but have plagued this country for centuries, you know, for sure. So, wow. So Kevin, now, LeBron James, you called some of his games during the playoffs and everything. And where do you see him right now amongst the pantheon of all-time greats in the NBA after winning this title?
Yeah, I think Nabaté, he is definitely on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, I don't even think before this he was on the Mount Rushmore of great players in the history of pro basketball. But what he accomplished with his team, his third different Finals MVP award, which has never been done. You know, in this kind of situation, 3 months away, not able to do the other things that you would normally do. But at the same time, there was no travel. It was a pretty constant environment, and that environment was like a laboratory, and the laboratory produced, I think, a true champion. We got probably the best team out of the East in Miami. They were a complete team. And the players, I think, that were really into it were focused and played at the very best of their ability. Sometimes when you travel and you go on a trip and you play in a different arena, on the road, hostile crowd, and all those things, you may not think it affects you, but it does in some way. But he and these players had the same environment all the time. So laboratory-like, and thus I think we got our best champion, and we got our best view of LeBron to be in that situation. He had to mentally fight the restrictions that he had as a player. He had to incorporate new players late in the season, then the stoppage of play, and then re-upping again and trying to regain what they had. Incorporating new players is never easy, especially for someone as precise and detail-oriented as LeBron. So I admire him on so many levels. And as you just accurately mentioned, you know, the social issues which are plaguing this country, emphasized even more with the different events from March through the summer, through the spring and summer, highlight a completely different factor that these players had to deal with. And that wasn't easy. So when you put all of that in a bag and shake it around and throw it out on the table, you see a lot of different things that these players were going through, and thus you appreciate what they did even more, I think, on so many levels.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Here with the great Kevin Harlan, great broadcaster for the NBA, the NFL, NCAA basketball as well. His career has spanned 4 decades of excellence for sure. So Kevin, wow. Now, um, which NFL players, because you cover the NFL throughout the year, which players have really stood out to you so far this season?
Well, Russell Wilson up in Seattle,
Hmm.
Nabaté has had an incredible season. I don't know if one team relies on one player more than they rely on him. Their defense is just ordinary, not really many headliners offensively, and
Hmm.
he is truly the engine for that team, playing the single most important position in sports, NFL quarterback. You've got more invested, more is on your shoulder, more responsibility, on and on and on.
Hmm.
So already the position warrants, special things from that person.
Yes.
And then to lead and be as good as they've been, basically because of him, speaks volumes of where he is. But we've seen this story from Russell before. He's
Hmm.
always been, I think, in MVP conversations in seasons past. To
Right.
me, put together a Hall of Fame resume. I think we're on a path here of seeing him through a third of the season, seeing him, Nabaté, get the kind of recognition that he richly deserves. I just think he's been phenomenal. Not surprised, but he's even taken it almost to another level. And then
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers at Green Bay has won it
Your
twice.
your
And,
Packers.
right? And they've been just as good as Seattle.
Hmm.
And Green Bay's been great. I guess those two guys, I know I'm forgetting people, but at least off the top of my head, and I hate to always dwell on quarterbacking, but it always seems to be such a vital part of a team's success. If you don't have quarterbacking, normally your team is not that good. Those two teams have gotten it to the highest degree and have shown with unbeaten records so far.
Wow. And speaking of quarterbacking, since you're a Packers fan and since your father, Bob, was a CEO for the Packers for many years, and helped the Packers get to relevance, especially hiring GM Ron Wolf, Starr, Favre, or Rodgers, who would you go with in a Super Bowl game?
Well, before I get into that, I would say that the organization and pretty much their fan base, uh, that's all they've really had. There was a separation between Starr and Favre.
Hmm.
Bart ended about 1970, 71 is when he
Yeah,
retired, and then Brett came in
that's right.
1992.
That's right. Lynn Dickey, right? Dickey and then
Lynn Dickey
Mikowski,
was
Mikowski, and
about Lynn Dickey, and it's
hmm
great, Nabaté, you mentioned him because he was an unbelievable quarterback. Was
hmm
statistically the team was kind of a middling team, but
Yep.
he statistically was incredible,
Yes.
incredible.
Yes,
James
indeed.
Lofton, the Hall of Fame
Oh,
receiver.
yes, yes.
And people forget John Jefferson was actually on that team
Oh,
for
that's
a while
right.
too.
Before going to San Diego. Yes, indeed. Hmm.
After San
After
Diego,
San Diego. Oh my God, that's right. Okay, that's
yeah,
right. In the mid 80s,
he
mid
a couple of
80s. My fault.
routes and
Yeah.
made those acrobatic catches, and then was dealt
Hmm.
to Green Bay,
Hmm.
and but people, probably take for granted. They probably, if you're a Packer fan of a certain age, you probably say, well, quarterback, this is easy. Went from one Hall of Fame quarterback in Favre to another one because Rodgers and Favre overlapped by 3 years. So it's kind of like San Francisco. They went from Montana to Young, right? There are
Hmm.
not many franchises that have gone from
And Garcia after Young, who was decent.
from one
Yeah.
Hall of Fame
Hmm.
quarterback to the next with
Hmm.
like no hesitation, no
Hmm.
no speed bumps. So
Yeah.
that those two organizations have. I don't know who I would pick. They're both so different. All three of them were so different.
Hmm.
Starr was a championship quarterback with a very
Hmm.
even keel demeanor and
Yes.
played for a demanding coach in Lombardi.
Hmm.
Favre was truly a shoot off the hip, throw off the hip, gunslinging, acrobatic quarterback, and then
Hmm.
Rodgers, maybe the most gifted passer of the three,
Hmm.
has had his own special place and a Super Bowl champion and two MVPs.
Hmm.
And the one thing they'll say about Favre and Rodgers, I think, though, Nabaté, is that they should have probably played in more Super Bowls.
Hmm.
Rodgers has played in one and won that one
Hmm.
against Pittsburgh, Super Bowl 45. Favre
Hmm.
played in a couple,
Hmm.
only won one. And then, then you get Starr, who was a champion, five-time champion.
Yes, sir.
Vince Lombardi. So
Mm-hmm.
hard to pick. They all do things differently, but they are a trifecta unlike almost any other organization. I mean, you go Brody, Montana, and Young for San Francisco. The Giants have their own special category of quarterback, but there are very few teams that could match what the Niners and what the Packers have had in terms of historically prominent quarterbacking.
Right. Wow. And the Colts, too bad with Andrew Luck retiring prematurely because of, injuries and everything.
Yeah.
Too bad he couldn't have that 13, 14, 15 career after Peyton Manning.
That's the only one, because you've got Unitas, then you'd have Peyton.
That's right.
And then it could have been Andrew Luck. And unfortunately, he never got quite that far. And as you accurately point out, his career shortened. So they probably would be part of the conversation, but not at the end of the conversation. When you talk about, three unbelievably gifted and successful quarterbacks. And even San Francisco, you must understand too, because Brody never played in a Super Bowl. I'd have to go back and look if John Brody ever played in a championship game.
Yeah.
He may have, that I have forgotten, and it would not surprise me if
Actually, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. Yeah.
So again, it was just those two. So when you look at Green Bay, historically in a pretty isolated column of historical quarterbacking success.
Well, no, absolutely. That's for sure. And Kevin, I have a couple more questions for you. I know you're very busy. I know you have your game to get ready for tomorrow with the Broncos at the Patriots. And now, what were the techniques that you worked on, to be able to be so distinctive, to distinguish your voice and to cultivate your style? What were the techniques and exercises throughout your career that you worked on to make you truly unique and memorable?
Well, the first thing I was attracted to, I was a sports fan, but I'm going back to when I was like 7 and 8 years old, was voice. I've always been captivated by voice. And I should go to the end of this by saying the voice I have is not the voice that I dreamt or hoped I would have. It is just kind of developed like all voices do. I mean, you can have more structure and more definition, but it's not the way I had hoped I would sound. But the first voice I really recognized and stood out to me was the voice of NFL Films, John Facenda.
Oh, yes.
And the Pat Summeralls and the Ray Scotts and the Jim Simpsons, Chuck Thompson, who was a local broadcaster, did a lot of national work, but he was based in Baltimore. Don Crickey.
Wow. Yes.
Those are the voices I was really attracted to. And then those voices kind of served as my gateway into really getting into sports. So growing up in the Midwest, those were the voices I hung to. And those are the voices that, quite frankly, when I was young, and again, like 9, 10, 11, 12, would try to mimic and copy. And I didn't know it at the time, but as I got older, trying to figure out, well, why would I have done that? Why, what purpose did that serve? And what it served was it kind of gave my voice and the muscles and your delivery a roadmap to follow. To me, those are perfect voices: Summerall, Scott, Thompson, Facenda. And so what subconsciously it was doing at that time, and now what I realize is it gave me kind of a roadmap to follow. And I remember a conversation I had with Kobe Bryant about 2 years ago.
God rest his soul.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? We had about a 2-hour session in Newport Beach, California, about 2 years ago. May have been actually one of the last long form interviews that he ever did. And we did it for the 2K NBA video game series. And I'll give you just a little inside that this 2-hour interview will be going public soon.
Oh, good.
No one has seen it except myself. And I know that Vanessa, Kobe's wife, is involved in this process. And I watched it again a couple nights ago. They've cut it down from the 2+ hour interview to about an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't really realize it at the time, and it happens a lot. I think you only realize it perhaps when that person is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Kobe no longer with us. But the things he talks about is, I think number one, I think that people just overall will be interested to watch it. Number two, if you're a basketball fan and love the game, you'll be mesmerized. Number three, if you're a coach or a player, and if you listen to what he talks about, it will be stunning in terms of how he approached the game, how he thought the game, how he practiced away from the game. It's unbelievable. But in this interview, he talks about using Jordan as a roadmap for how he played.
That's right.
It's almost, the two are almost inseparable. If you go on YouTube, there is a 2-minute comparison YouTube video that somebody put together with dramatic music, and it shows their shooting styles, how they played, how they drove to the basket, how they leapt and jammed the ball. It's like scary how close they were. But Kobe, in this interview that I did, talks about he was my roadmap. Jordan was my roadmap. That's why we look so similar. And then it just so happened they were wired mentally the same way too.
Yes, indeed.
So I use these voices as a roadmap and follow that still to this day. Having begun my broadcast career when I was about 13 years old, still to this day, we'll hear those voices in my head, much like, I'm not comparing me and Kobe, certainly, I would not, but I'm saying that I think all great performers, all people in that world, all had someone they idolized and mimicked and copied, because that was their gateway into performance or singing or playing an instrument or whatever. People talk about Eddie Van Halen and the way he played the guitar and how people copied his style. And so, there are all these actors and actresses. And anyway, that was my entree into voice, which then, fueled my love of sports. And that's kind of how I've progressed in my career. And I think about those voices all the time.
That's right. Knowing your history. And that's the thing, because a lot of younger people in the generation, like even in general, don't really delve into that history to be able to cultivate their own voice from getting little things from the past, So
you need to, I think, in any performance. I mean, everybody is singular in what they do and how they sound like, how they've patterned themselves. But, Ian and Mike Breen have talked growing up in New York. It's indisputable that they have a lot of traits of the great Marv Albert. People say, well, you sound like Marv. I said, not on purpose. I don't think they sound on purpose, but they grew up with them. I didn't grow up with that voice. I grew up with other voices. I really didn't even realize or listen to Marv Albert probably until I was in my 20s. Clearly, and he was an established announcer, and I remember hearing him, but not thinking, he's a great network voice, and as it turns out, the greatest voice that basketball's ever had, but also did Olympics and did NFL and did other some college basketball. I mean, he's done a lot, but I never, that wasn't a voice I listened to. I do think that when you do hockey, when you do basketball, the fact that people have sounded, even though they didn't grow up in New York, and I'm not the only one, there are many, the game lends itself to that kind of delivery.
Yes.
And Marv Albert just happened to be the kind of the godfather of that delivery. The fast-paced, machine gun style, and people just naturally picked up on, that's the way you call games on radio, talked about fakes, love, dribbles, right of the key, jump shot, defending. It just happens with the call, much like a lot of broadcasters will listen to Doc Emmerich and will sound style just automatically, because that's the way hockey is called, radio or TV. So it just kind of, there are things that become inherent with the sport that lends itself to so many people kind of sounding alike in some form or fashion.
Wow. And Kevin, one more question for you before I let you go. The game that still resonates to you to this day, that one game, it can be in any sport that you call, that you still, it still comes up in your mind, like subconsciously.
Well, there are moments in games that, from a broadcast standpoint, I'm pleased with. More times than not, when I go back and watch, I could have used a different way of saying that, or whatever.
Oh, you're perfectionist.
There's always that. Then you feel, and then the other part of that conversation is a game that you felt, so lucky, blessed, fortunate to call. All the Super Bowls I've done for Westwood One. Mm-hmm. I've done 11 of them. Mm-hmm. You remember parts of those games, but the totality of them, Nabaté, is this. And I feel this way when I do the NFL on CBS, or a Super Bowl or an NFL game for Westwood, or do the tournament for CBS television, or the NBA for TNT. Mm-hmm. And I guess I got a connected feeling that, first of all, you never want to build the game up too much, because I think it can do some things I think you realize, but I think you got to treat every game the same. Mm-hmm. So with that thought, I would say that every time I put on a headset or get in back of a microphone, there is a moment when I do that, and I look over an NFL field or an NBA court or an NCAA tournament floor, that I don't, say a small prayer of thanks for being in a position to do something that I dreamt of doing. I think there are so many of us that dream of being something, but life takes them on a different path, and they don't get to do what they thought they might do. Some people dream of being a fireman or a policeman or a doctor or a lawyer, and for whatever reason, life is taking them on a different path for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So there are those few that are in a position in life that have a profession where they are doing what they dreamt of doing when they were small, when they were, a little boy or a little girl. And they thought, because I told our kids, I said, I would never want there to be, like I think you begin life by thinking, when you're that wide-eyed 8-9-year-old and you look up in the sky and you say, I would love to be an airline pilot, or I'd love to, you go to the doctor and say, I'd love to help people and be a doctor, or I'd love to be a person in the political world that helps people have a better life overall. Mm-hmm. And then for so many of us, for whatever reason, and the reasons are innumerable. Like life takes us down a different road, different. So when I put on that headset, from the time I was kind of a little kid, this is what I dreamt of, being an NFL announcer, a network announcer, doing a Super Bowl on radio. Radio is my first passion. Mm-hmm. That's when I say, thank you for, letting me wake up every day excited about my job. And so with our kids, we had 4 kids, and I told them, one time or another, there's nothing like waking up in the morning and looking forward to your day and saying, I'm doing what my passion, as you say. I'm living a dream every day. So it's hard for me to ever complain about whether we're getting tested or got to wear a mask or, the travel. Yes. I hate to complain. I never want to complain, because I feel like I'm too lucky to do any of that. So you're looking at a very, very fortunate man, and I get to talk to wonderful, kind, nice people like you, Nabaté, that clearly has a wonderful life, a strong purpose, a beautiful soul, a moral compass that you appreciate in other people, and I see that in you, and so that's why it's so fun to visit with you about all these different topics here in this portion of your program.
Wow, I really appreciate those words. That really means a lot, Kevin, and I appreciate everything you bring to sports, everything you bring to life in general. Just to hear your voice in a game, it really enhances and augments
Oh,
everything,
nice.
for sure. Yes, sir. And wow, wow, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on so much to talk about. And yeah, looking forward to being in touch and everything. And thank
Good.
you, sir.
I hope we do it again. I
Yes,
hope we,
sir.
know it's taken a while to get this going, and people don't know you were so patient with our because we don't
Oh,
know
it's
when
a lot going on.
these COVID tests, and we're here, then they've canceled the game, then we leave, and so things are always kind of up in the air. But thank you for your patience, and what a treat to visit with you. We've met in person, so
Yes.
we know that, and I hope to get back and see you again in person when we get to the Garden or back to the Meadowlands to do a game when we're all as fans and as media
Mhm.
again brought together in something we all enjoy so much, and that's sports.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Wow. And thank you. Thank you so much. And thank all of you for watching so much to talk about. Have a wonderful night. God bless. And make sure to vote on November 3rd or beforehand. You can do that beforehand as well. Make sure you vote. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.